with us for today. I'm on the wrong screen. That's better. Right, we're introducing the website tools. Now, these for Warwickshire County Council a couple of years ago. We're really wanting people to use these, want more places to pick them up and make most of them. And when we talk about the destination website tools, we're talking about specifically the website toolkit and the destination template. Now, I'm going to go into more details about what they are, but suffice to say they are kind of a complete solution to help smaller places get online and have their own web presence and to make it effective. If you do that, you can create something, something pretty decent. We've been working with Polesworth in North Warwickshire to do this as an example to show what could be possible. This is the Polesworth website that they've put together as a result of using the template and working through the tools and the knowledge that's in the toolkit. Going to look at stuff in more detail a little bit later on, but this is just to kind of give you a feel of what you can do with it. The idea being that it's about a place having to think about their content rather than worry too much about all of the hard, difficult functions, the barriers to getting places online. Okay, so why do this? Why go to all that effort? And more importantly, why do we need these tools? To be honest, and this is the kind of the point, and I hope I'm not teaching anyone to suck eggs here about websites, but particularly in sort of tourism circles, visitors expect a comprehensive website. It really is expected. People will Google something, expect an easy answer. If we send them around lots of different sites or can't give them the information they want, we're going to lose them. Unlike anything else, a website is visible and working for a place all the time. It literally is that 24/7, 365 day for a place. And I think the important bit is too often now a website is the first piece of contact people have with a place. So it's that chance to really inspire people, really impress them, really get across the message that says this place is worth looking at. You probably should come along now. And if nothing else, it's actually that kind of central hub for all the other activity that a place does. So whether they're doing events, putting out publications, doing social media, whatever that happens to be, the website is where you can tell people to find out more. Oh, look, someone else has turned up. Excellent. So it plays a really key role. The problem is, of course, is that when places, smaller places, develop websites, they're not always good. Now, I have blocked out the name of this next place to protect their guilt, but this is not to have a laugh at people's website design, but it's just to make a point. This is a website for a very nice little village that is somewhere east of England that shall remain nameless. Now, I'm not picking on this to say this is a bad website. There's a lot of good information here. The problem is they haven't thought about how people might want to digest this, how they want to present themselves, how they want to get that message over. So no matter how nice this place is in reality, a look at this, despite that it's got listings of clubs and societies and shops and places to eat and drink, does not encourage you to want to visit. The trouble is places don't think about the character and the message they want to get across, telling people why it's worth a visit. They just see it as a simple tool or repository of information. The other problem you might find is there may not be anything at all. Places think they don't need a website, or maybe they think a Facebook group is enough. It's really not, by the way. So the problem here is that a potential visitor doesn't even get a chance to be aware that a place exists, or they're being served that content from another third party, a third party that the place itself doesn't have any control over. So that could be, it could be out of date. It could say things that aren't particularly complimentary, or it could just say things that a place doesn't want said about itself. Now, we do have things like DMOs. Hello, Helen, I can see you there.
Oh.
DMO's job
James,
is...
can I just interrupt? All we can see is just a quick, we can just see a blank screen at the moment of Google.
That's the point I was making.
Oh, sorry.
Aaron, come on, get with the program.
I'm trying to do the admin, sorry.
To be fair, I did say to Aaron, if everything goes sideways, let me know, and he's done his job perfectly. But I'm saying there are things like DMOs. Now, a DMO, a destination management organisation, their job is to promote a whole area, but they're not experts in every little tiny place. They can't be as good experts as the individual places themselves. It's not viable for them to be. So regardless, the point is, if you don't do your website well, the message or story a place wants to get across doesn't happen. And that's to the detriment of the place, to its local economy, and if we're being honest, kind of Warwickshire as a whole, because Warwickshire is a lovely place. It's full of brilliant stuff. And if all those amazing places in Warwickshire could really show their assets, could convey how great a visit here could be, and work together, we put together a bigger proposition for the county, and that helps put Warwickshire on the map. So I guess what I'm saying here is a website is really relevant for a place itself, but it also helps for that bigger picture. You know, if we all can shout about all the little different things that Warwickshire has as a whole, we have so much more to offer. So why did we do this? So basically, if we boil it down to in the simplest terms, this is why Warwickshire County Council wanted to do this. It's about plugging those gaps at the lowest level, about helping smaller places, market towns, places that may not have the time, the resources, the energy or the expertise to normally do this, to kind of give them a helping hand to make sure that happens and get them online, find an easy way to do it. That's even more important now as part of the work to, you know, recover from, well, let's say the first wave of COVID and what's potentially might happen. But the point being is that being able to put across a comprehensive picture of Warwickshire is even more important than ever. And there is the new Visit Warwickshire marketing campaign that's going to be coming out. So if you think about it, if every place could think about how they want to present themselves, do it well, have these kind of online presences that actually work, that makes life so much easier. Last point I'd like to make before we actually get on to look at stuff is that this isn't about things being prescriptive. We're not trying to make everyone look the same. Okay, so if a place already has a website, this is Shipston on Stour's website, it's a bit out of date, but it's not bad. It provides the information, it's okay. So if a place already has a site, this isn't about making them look like everyone else. It's a kind of a hand up and sort of a fantastic resource for those who don't. So if you already have a website, anyone here, or you have the funds and wherewithal to develop one, this is not about forcing you to redo all your work. Rather, might just be some useful assets to help you be more effective, to be more efficient, and perhaps to sort of improve the. All right, enough preamble. Let's have a look at some of these tools. Now, what I'm going to do is we're going to have a quick look at the toolkit, and then we'll take any questions that we've got based on the toolkit, and then we'll go and look at the template afterwards. Okay, I'm going to start with the toolkit because it's actually a little bit easier to kind of explain, although this is a horrible medium to try and show someone what's inside a document, so bear with me on that one. Okay, so the point of the toolkit is it is literally a complete guide to creating a website for a destination. So anywhere that considers itself a place, has something to offer a visitor, this is what it is. From coming up with the original idea of, hey, we want to do a website, that seems like a good idea, all the way up to launching it and managing it after you've launched it. And as I said, we've written it specifically with destinations in mind. It is a document, but we've made it an interactive document. So it's not so much a document you just read, it's a document you actually do with things with. So it's an interactive PDF, so you can fill out certain form fields. It helps people structure their thinking. It helps people, you know, do checklists and all that kind of thing to help them plan how that website can really work for them. I think I'd also like to say one of the big things of it is I'm very aware that the jargon and the way website stuff is presented is often a barrier for people getting involved in it. So we've tried to write this as much as possible for, you know, try to demystify those concepts, try and explain it to people from scratch and try not to be techie. So it shouldn't be seen as something impenetrable. Hopefully it kind of helps you do that, get away from that. Okay, so there's 4 key parts of it. There is planning, which is all the stuff you need to do before you actually start building something. Some actual looking at how you might go about building a website, all the things you might need to know about populating it with stuff, because obviously having a nice site is wonderful, but it's not as good as if you actually put things in it. And also about how you can finalize, launch and get a site out there and manage it going forward. So as you can see, it kind of really does cover that A through the way to Z kind of thing. Now, let's have a little look at some of these sections in more detail, and I'll show you a couple of the tools actually in action, which will be fun. Hopefully it'll work. Bear with me on that. All right, so just say section 1. So section 1 is, this is about planning. Now, this is probably the most important section because it's the bit that people forget when they create websites. They get all excited about what color they're going to make things, what images they're going to choose, or how they're going to like bring social media feeds in and things like that. So this section is there to kind of help people kind of focus on the bits that are important. So there's lots of tools in there, and it covers things like setting up a project team, assigning roles, working out what your objectives are, what you want the site to actually do, who it's for, what you want to say about your place, which is kind of a bit of a key one, how you kind of structure your project so you know what you've got to do when, and then looking at other things like defining your architecture of the site, thinking about what functions you might need in it, thinking about going into more detail about things like, you know, wireframes, page profiles, that kind of stuff that you need to think about. Ultimately, at the end of it, you'd have all the pieces you needed to either go and make the site yourself, or you've got enough there to write a comprehensive brief for any kind of developer that you bring on board. Obviously, if you're going to use the template, you do that, but this kind of gives you the kind of the basic structure. So let's have a quick look at a couple of the tools. One of the ones we've got in there is a project planner. I just want to show you this just so you get a feel for how the toolkit sort of works. The idea of this was to help people be realistic about how long it takes to build a website and also what goes into each of the steps. So rather than people saying, you know, oh, we'll have it out by Easter, or we'll have it out by the end of next week, which probably won't happen, let's be honest. So it's about helping people do that. So we've kind of spec'd out all the different steps, and there's also some automatic calculations, some real clever JavaScript and stuff in there that helps you. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, okay, right. So this is the project planner. So just very quickly to run through it, the idea being that you would put in your prospective start date, because this is all fillable form fill. So if we say 1st of November is our project start date. Now for the rest of the form, you've just got to kind of estimate how long you think it might take you to do each step. So for example, you might say we'll need 3 days to plan things. We might need 3 weeks to employ a web designer, for instance, because, you know, we've got to do interviews and callbacks and things like that. They tell us they might need 2 weeks to design the site. We might need, and they'll need another 3 weeks to build it afterwards. Then you have to think about how long it might take you to come up with the content, because obviously content, you know, anyone who's developing a site for you, or if you're using the template, you know, you've still got to generate the content yourself. So you might say, okay, we think it's going to take us 2 days to get the text together. We might need a week to source all the images we need. We might need 2 weeks to get our listings together, because, you know, the listings of what kind of businesses have you got and things like that are probably going to form the heart of the site. And you might need another couple of days to get things like walks guides or whatever together. So that totals that up for you. You have the option of whether you say, you know, can you do the content while the site's being built, or does it have to happen afterwards once the site's been built? So you can choose to yes or no there. And then you might need, you know, we need another 2 days to put in things like social media feeds and Google Maps and stuff. We're going to need a week to upload all of that content. We'll give ourselves 2 weeks to test and finalize. And because it's a project and we're being conscientious, we'll add 5 days for revisions and a couple of days for sign off. So what that does is it kind of says to you, if you've got your prospective start date there, your prospective end date, or your earliest date you could possibly launch is going to be there. So it kind of gives people a kind of a realistic time frame of how to structure that project. What's then clever is it kind of then develops or feeds into this, which then gives you a full project plan. So you can say, actually, if we're going to start this, then we have to have it finished by X. We're going to start this by then, we have to have it finished by X. And it kind of automatically works out based on the day allocation you did. And it just allows you to put in someone's name next to it. So it might be my responsibility. Let's say we'll give that to Tom. I don't know who Tom is, but he's probably very pleased to have that. And we'll give Tom 200 quid to do that one. So you can kind of see it's just an easy way to help people structure a project. And that sort of gives you an idea of how some of these tools in there work. Now you can, obviously it's interactive PDF, you can save this with all the stuff in, so a place can save this and kind of continue working on through. I'm not going to. Let me close that. Just look at another tool that's in section 1. So this is for page profile. So this idea is that for every page in your website, you're going to need certain types of content. You're going to see certain things. Now, what happens is that people create a website and then sit there staring at the, I don't know, let's say the what to do page, and they sort of sit there and they think, I have no idea what to put on this page at all, you know, and you don't end up getting the right messages across all the right things happening. So the idea of this tool is to get people to start thinking from day one what they might need this page to do. So let's dive into this one quickly. Yes, there we go. Right, okay, so just kind of taking you just through this chapter. Okay, so this explains what the tool is, the fact that each page should be doing something specific, tells you that you need to do it. There's some ideas there for inspiration. And it gives you some examples and says, look, for each page, think about what navigation tier it's going to sit on. Is it a really important page? Does it sit underneath something else? Think about what the actual purpose of that page is. What are the big things you want people to do once they're on that page? What do you need in terms of text for that page? What kind of images might you need for that page? What other things might you need? 'Cause you might need a map or a video or things like that. What things are you going to want to link to? And then just think about what clever things the page might need to do. So the idea is if people can develop one of these for each of the pages on their site, it kind of gives them much more of a clue about what should be included in it. With each of these, with this one here, for instance, so this is the one that people can fill in. So you fill it in. When you get to the bottom, you can choose to print it, which will save a copy of that specific one. You can then clear the form so you can start again for your next page. So it's an aid to help people plan the kind of content for each page. Ooh. Okay. Section 2 is about building a site. Now, because of the scope of this document, and also because, frankly, if you know how to build websites, there's really not much point us telling you. This kind of goes in two ways. So first of all, it kind of gives you the basics to understand whether you should be doing it yourself or not, talking you through some of the options of doing that and some of the things you need to know, like setting up hosting, all of those sorts of things, and explaining what some of those mean. There's then a big chunk in there about how you work with developers or designers, how you find them, how you write a brief, how you can evaluate a brief that comes in, how you can manage that relationship, what you do if everything goes horribly wrong, because sometimes these things happen. And then it kind of goes into some stuff that, regardless of whether you're using the template or whether you're bringing in an external developer, is some things that you should know. So there's some basics in there on design, colors, using typography, and then a basic primer to help you understand how the web works, and some basics on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, that's not there to teach you how to build a website. It's so that when, say, something happens in your content management system, you know the basics of, why has my paragraph been aligned over there? Why haven't my bullet points appeared in the way I want them to be? How do I add an image in here? Things like that. So just some very basics to get people started. Just going to show you it very quickly. So this is the entire chapter about how to get started with HTML. There's 7 pages I'm going to show you, just to show that it's not a kind of a comprehensive thing. It's just the basics that people need to know. So for each of these pieces, we're saying, explain to people why you need to know it. In short, you'll know why stuff happens and how to fix it. You'll also not be confused when your web developer says X. You'll be able to manage that relationship better because you have more of a handle on what's happening. Explain to people what HTML is. Explaining the fact that everything works in tags in HTML. So you put these tags with the sharp brackets around something, it creates something. So if I put a B tag around something, it makes text bold. And then explaining to people how you can nest tags, and then just showing you the very basics of the main formatting tags you'll find, like a paragraph tag, a line break, bold, italic, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. Yeah, so it's kind of just teaching the basic ones you'd need if you're kind of formatting stuff, even if that's just in the admin area of a content management system. How you can create a bulleted list by using the unordered list tag. So you can kind of see it's just an initial primer to get people started. So we kind of go through some of those. And at the end of each section, there we go. At the end of each section, there's loads more kind of references where you can find out more and kind of things to kind of improve your knowledge. But the point is, it's just teaching you the very basics that most people should know. And honestly, that's much easier than learning the very basics of French. Trust me. Definitely much easier than learning the basics of Greek. You could definitely trust me on that one. Okay. Oh, we're done there. Okay, so section 3 is about what you stick in the site. Now, section 3, again, it's you kind of break section 3 down as 2 parts. So the first part is kind of generic advice of how you do things like create good titles, how you write good copy for your site, how you choose images, how you select video, all of those bits and pieces that you might need to know generally. Then we take the destination template, which we'll look at in a minute, and kind of use it as an example to show people, here's what should go on these kind of pages. If you've got a home page, you're going to need this, which means you'll need to do that, which means you need to do that. So kind of helping people step by step to literally populate the site with good content. As part of that, we actually include a couple of extra tools to do things that most people don't normally think about. So normally you'd have your home page, you'd have the About Us page, you'd have a Contact Us page, you'd have your directory of businesses. So one of the other things we wanted to suggest was some things that destinations should do. And for me, one of my big bugbears is that places love to just give you a big long list of all the things they've got and expect people to be excited about it. And actually, I think people need to think more about structuring things for visitors. Say, actually, if you've got half a day and you're really interested in the history, here's how we can suggest you'd best enjoy that. Or if you're here with some kids, here's how we suggest you spend a great weekend in our place. You're kind of helping interpret what you have for people. So we've created a tool. Yeah, we've got a tool in here, the itineraries tool, which first of all shows you what the tool looks like in the template, which we'll look at in a minute. So kind of give you an example of how something like this could function. Explaining the case for it. Telling people what you need to include on that page. So you can see that this is actually replicated for all the other kind of pages that are in the template within the toolkit. And talking about, what an itinerary is. Now, what's interesting is then we can create an actual tool to help people create these itineraries. So they don't have to be big, they don't have to be clever, they don't have to be anything particularly grandiose. What they just need to do is be able to string a certain number of things together for people in a place. So we kind of go through a tool to explain to people how to do that. So firstly, you need to collect obviously a big pool of all the things that you've got that you think are really exciting for people in terms of experiences in your place. Now that could be attractions, activities, food and drink. It could be points of interest, could be trails. It could be, the fact that if you watch sunset on top of that hill, it's absolutely fantastic and therefore people shouldn't miss that. So you kind of collect this pool of it. Then there's a kind of a checklist there that says actually look for stuff that's a little bit different. Try and find stuff that will allow people to do something a bit more unexpected, things like that, because that has a bit more of a pull. Then it explains the whole idea of defining a canvas. So saying actually, pick a period of time. A day is a really good one. Half a day is possible. A weekend is fine. Anything longer gets a bit unwieldy. Give it a theme, because it's much easier to kind of structure something and write something if you're using a theme. So, heritage is great, families, romantic stuff for couples if you really like. I'll be honest, whenever I've ever done this at a workshop, you get some really weird stuff in the romantic one. People have some very, very strange ideas about romance, but that's fine. Places become interesting as a result of it. And then there's just literally a tool here to kind of help people lay it out. So you can say in the early morning, let's do this. And then we might do that. Then in the afternoon, we might do this. But the point about this is it helps people lay out and encourage them not to forget meals, encourage them not to forget the early morning or the evening and things like that. And then there's some tools in here to help, just some random examples, and some tools to help people actually create them. So the idea at the end of it, people can create some solid content which helps interpret a place. And we've already shown them how you might put that together on a page. So you're kind of getting a feel for like how the content section works. Let me just save that one. Finally, we've got the finalizing, the finishing section, which is all about, okay, your site's done. Here's how you launch it, get it ready, get it out there, and what you do with it afterwards. So it covers things like setting up SEO, analytics, launching a site, legal stuff, GDPR, testing, security, all of those sorts of things that you need to know to launch a site, but also manage it going forward. Let me very quickly just show you the pre-flight checklist. So this is a kind of an aid to memory and a kind of a final check for people before you push the button to send your site live, because you'd be surprised how often sites go live when they're not ready, So it's about to help people know if everything's working and help them know what they missed. Okay, so basically it's just a checklist that asks people questions but gives them actual links in there to tools to help them evaluate that and actually learn more. So for example, have you tested how quick your site is? If you haven't, you can click the link to Google PageSpeed or to GT Metrics, which are both free things that will tell you how quick your site is and also tell you what's slowing it down. Does it look the same across all browsers? Does it work on phones? Have you made it obvious where your destination is located? Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, but you believe me, you would not underestimate how many people don't do that. Have you tested all your contact forms, search things, stuff like that? Is your text legible over your background? Have you used high quality images? are all your pages less than 3 clicks? You know, there's just, so basically it's just a simple list. You should kind of go down it, check it through, make sure your site is ready to be launched. And there's lots of different kind of points in there. And the bottom line says, you know, if you fail any of these, don't worry, but just, you know, do take steps to remedy it before you put it live. So it's a kind of an aid to memory to kind of help you do that. So that's kind of basically the toolkit. Now, I said it is a PDF file. You can view it in your browser. It's best to download a copy, save it, because then if you use the interactive elements, you can save a copy with all of that in. There's lots of interactive stuff, some of which will do very clever things and spit things out elsewhere to help you kind of structure your projects and decide what you're going to do. You could print it out. It will be a lot of paper and you will miss all the interactive stuff, so that's kind of a bit silly. It should work fine on just about anything as long as you can read a PDF. So I would say encourage anyone who has a website, is thinking of building a website, or just randomly passing in the street to go and have a look at it. You can get it from destinationtemplate.co.uk. Have we got any questions on the toolkit?
Right, James, if you want to unmute yourself.
Not me, the other James.
The other James, James Kennedy.
Hi, James. Thanks very much. That's a really good sort of scamper through what you've got to offer. I'm sure there's a lot to explore there. I'm just wondering, this is provided for Warwickshire County Council for anybody to use, any organisation in Warwickshire. What are the sort of, you know, what's your copyright, intellectual property on this in terms of other people using it? Because it looks ideal for all sorts of organisations.
Okay, well, I was paid to do this by Warwickshire County Council, so I have handed entire copyright of everything that's in it to them. So Alex Holmes is your man to have that discussion with, and I'm sure he'd love you to use it. I'm sure he'd love lots of people to use it.
Yeah, could Alex just sort of confirm what the deal is?
Yeah, James, it's out there as a free resource, and one of the reasons why we're running this session and the second one is that we're just conscious that not everybody knows it's out there, and it's important, I think, particularly for, and I don't want to say the smaller places, but I mean, actually it tends to be those places that haven't even thought about a website, but have got absolutely fantastic places and great stuff to tell their visitors about. So yeah, we wanted to make it a free resource.
Thanks, that's really helpful.
No worries. Any other questions? No, it's just me looking at Alex by himself. That's fine.
We've got 2 questions.
Please.
Alex, Michael, and then Colin in that order would be great.
Go for it. Alex,
Ooh.
Are you out there? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's not me asking the question.
Right, okay, it's
No,
me,
the other Alex, not you.
Steering.
Yeah, that's it. Alex.
Hi, James.
Hey, Alex. How you doing?
Fine. How does it link with other websites? For example, I'm thinking about Shakespeare's England and that kind of thing. Or is there any way that it's or any? I mean, we in Kenilworth have an existing website, so what would you advise for that?
Okay, well, I mean, the toolkit's there to basically improve people's websites or help people plan and build a website if they're doing it from scratch. It's supposed to answer all of those nasty questions. One of which we do delve into in quite a lot is how you work with and how you link to your DMO or other, other marketing agencies or promotional bodies that might be around you. So there's a lot of detail into that. So you could use it if you are starting out. It's certainly worth looking at as a terms of like reviewing your own site. And we've tried to put, like I said, everything in there that a place might need to know. So if you have a question about your website, there's a good chance the answer is in it, if that helps.
Yeah, thanks. Yes. And do you feel that it could be something easy to work with, or is it necessary to employ anybody else to work with you on it?
Well, well, yeah. I mean, look, that is one of the questions that people ask me. Look, at the end of the day, I know doing a website is seen as difficult. It's not seen as the easiest thing for people. There are barriers to entry. Some of that is things whether people understand all of the jargon, all of the terms. People get put off by the fact that they don't know how to code stuff or things like that, or you're put off by the wealth of options. So the idea of this was to kind of try and simplify that. So in theory, yes, you could do it all yourself. The toolkit tells you how to go through the process, and the template helps you shortcut the how do I build this. So it kind of gives you that starting point. We'll look at that in a second, but you don't necessarily need to employ anyone if you can use these tools, and that was the idea. So if it's a smaller place, you can get yourself up and running with it.
Okay, thanks very much.
No worries. Who else we got next?
Michael.
Colin? Michael? Michael.
Hi.
Hi, Michael.
Nice little presentation there, like that. I feel very comfortable with it. I mean, the pitch is it emphasises the use for tourists.
Mm-hmm.
For consistency with other areas in Warwick, how do you feel about there being the boring council type information like pictures of the councillors and minutes of the meetings, or should that exist in a separate location or a separate website?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's the million and one question. In an ideal world, you should be. The thing is, you have to think about who's going to be using the site. If you're a visitor and you're using a site, you don't want to be clouded by information that's not relevant to you. So in an ideal world, yes, you keep them separate. However, I realise and I know that smaller places, you don't necessarily have the resources, or let's be honest, wanting to have the will to be able to, look after two separate websites. So yes, you can put local information, council related stuff, things for residents and stuff on a site like that, but you just have to be careful about how you structure it. As much as possible, it's good to separate the information. You see sites with a button when you come along that says, I'm planning on visiting this place, or I live here and I'm interested in local information. So you're giving people a chance to separate that kind of stuff. Having said that, everything that's in the toolkit, what the toolkit encourages you to do is encourage you to think about who might be using your site, what information they might need, and how you get them from being interested in your place to being able to come and visit it. Now, you could quite easily apply that with a little bit of sideways thinking to getting local residents out to use more of the town, getting people to engage with local groups or societies or whatever. It's still the same kind of principles, just all the information, the stuff that we've written in the toolkit, it is generally around getting visitors in, but everything's still applicable in the same way.
Okay, thank you. That's very good guidance. We've talked about linking in Google Maps.
Mm-hmm.
Other resources like ordnance survey type information. What's the constraints? Obviously, there's some copyright of ordnance survey, but can it be done?
Yes, you can use. There's two issues there. There's one which is about copyright and royalties and things like that. There is. I haven't looked at the ordnance survey one for years, but they did used to have something open under Crown copyright where you could actually use it all. But it's more about the ease of use. The reason most people use Google Maps on a website is that Google makes it easy for you to do it. I'll show you the template in a minute. You can see how simple it is to actually set up something that uses Google Maps. Now they do charge you, and there is a potential fee if you have an enormous amount of visits a month, but we'll look at that as well. There is the alternative. There's something called OpenStreetMap that you can use that will do something similar. There are other, I'm going to say the word JavaScript libraries, but don't ask me to explain what that is right this second. I'll be honest, it's hard to look beyond using Google Maps for something like that, simply because of the ease of use and how much other things integrate with it, I think is probably the point.
Well, that's it if you're only interested in streets and pavements, but a lot of the attractions around south of where we're from is cross country.
Sure.
And it doesn't exist on Google Maps, or not to any degree it's usable.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's lots of ways of doing things. You can actually create your own map libraries. It's possible to use Ordnance Survey stuff in that matter to add things like topography and all those other things that people might need. It's just a little bit trickier, you know, that's just the kind of the nature of the beast. There's always ways of doing what you want to do. It's just trying to find the easiest way of doing it is kind of the answer.
I like that answer. Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay, thanks for that. Thank
No
you.
worries. Who was next, Aaron? Sorry.
We've got Colin. If you unmute yourself, Colin, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, okay. I've got two questions, if I might.
Oh,
First one,
if you're quick, Colin, if you're quick.
first one was Alex referred to this being ideal for organisations that haven't really thought about having a website, and smaller ones. We're a larger, smaller authority, and we've got tourism as part of a lot of other things. So a lot of dry subjects like previous minutes and agendas and planning details, that sort of stuff. Would it be appropriate for us? Because we've got dynamic and static things. We've got links to the borough council. So that was the first question. Is it really appropriate for us? And secondly, we've had somebody that's helped us out in terms of designing it. I think somebody said that Warwickshire have taken this on board. But what's the continuity in terms of having a provision with Warwickshire? You know, would it happen that maybe somebody would lose interest and we finish up with another side that's not being supported?
Okay, all right. So two things. So firstly, in all honesty, as I answered to, who was it? Anyway, the point is the toolkit is just there to kind of help you think and plan what you're doing. Now, yes, it's been written for visitors. However, if you kind of work through it and think about what's in it, it's going to help you whether your audience is people who want parish council minutes or whether it's people who want to, you know, want to understand their local services and know when the bins are being picked up and all that kind of stuff. It's still, the thinking's still the same. We're just using the kind of the skin and the method of visitors to get people through. Right. So there's a lot of stuff that's in the toolkit that's applicable for everyone else. The second question, okay, so the toolkit itself is not prescribing a specific design or a specific way of doing a site. It's kind of giving you the power and the information to kind of choose yourself how you might want to do things. We're going to talk about the template in a minute, and the point of the template is so the idea is the toolkit shows you from start to finish what you should do. The template says, we know some of that's difficult. Here's a starting point that you can use if you want. And if you use this, it saves you a lot of work. So it's almost like kind of shortcutting the process slightly for you. I'll talk about the template itself rather than explain it here, if that's all right.
Okay.
Should we carry on, or?
I think that's it. If everyone else has got a question, we can carry on. Yeah.
Grand. All right. Okay, so as we've clearly segued into this, that's lovely. Right, so the template. So as I said, the idea of the template is that we've taken a lot of the thinking that goes behind the toolkit and then actually created a kind of a starting point for people. So while you could work through from the toolkit from start to finish, do everything yourself, the idea of this is this makes it easier to kind of get in there. And it is a literal site template, and it includes everything you'd need or a place would need to get going. Okay, so it includes all of the thinking, there's templates, there's design stuff already. It comes with, I'll talk about that in a second. Now, we made it available as either straight HTML or as a WordPress theme. Now, I'm assuming most of you wouldn't use the HTML one, but that's if you've already got a designer or a developer who wants to look at how the site, how it works. The one that most people are going to use is the custom WordPress theme. Now, I'll talk about WordPress a little bit in a while, but the idea being is that you can, if you have WordPress installed, you can install this with a few clicks of the button, set it up, and it's kind of not techie. We've included as much detail as we possibly can in the back end. There's full manuals with it as well. So the idea it can be kind of out of the box. You can be using it quite quickly. Okay. I have to say there's a few specific things to say about it. Firstly, we have built it specifically for tourism. Anyone who's ever used WordPress themes or templates or things like that before will know that you generally get generic stuff for business or for this or for that, but this has been done specifically for tourism as destinations. Okay, you may have noticed, and you'll see when we look at it, it's quite white and red, and it's quite, I'll be honest, it's a bit bland. The point of that is that it's that kind of bare bones neutral canvas that allows places to put their own stuff into it to shine, rather than being too prescriptive and saying you have to look a certain way. Having said that, it is very customizable. You can reflect your own look and feel quite easily, change what you want when you want. It's all straightforward. There's no coding skills required to do that. We built it on minimal clean code, so it works pretty quickly. There's nothing really bloated or difficult in there. It works on all devices straight out of the box, which I can show you in a minute. And one of the things we wanted to do with it was include demo content. So rather than just, when you sort of turn it on and set it all up, rather than just having a load of blank pages, you can choose to install the demo content, which says, right, on this page, there's 150 words of, Latin copy text and a load of images that kind of give you a flavour about what you need to provide. It kind of helps, because it's easier for people to look at what's there and then replace it with their own content than it is, as we said, to look at a page from start and know exactly what you have to add. What that means, it means for any place you can be set up and have it running in under an hour. The only costs that are actually involved in it are having your own domain name, having your own hosting. So this is basically the space where your website lives on a hosting platform. And you will need a Google Map API key. Now we'll talk about that a bit later, but altogether this is likely to cost significantly less than £100 a year. So this is not a big outlay to actually get started with the site. The point of it is we've done all the hard work on the planning so that places don't have to. All places have to do is worry about what they want to say about themselves, getting the content they want to put in there, and then uploading it to the site. And they can manage it all themselves without needing to contract developers or go to experts to make changes. So that's kind of what it does. Okay, right, I'm going to try and show this live. This will be fun. This may go horribly wrong, but we'll see. If you want to have a go playing with it live by yourself, you can head to that link at the bottom, which is wp.destinationtemplate.co.uk. No www on the front of that one. And that will help you do that. Right, let's see if we can make this work. Cool, hopefully everyone can see that. Everyone nod if you can, apart from Aaron. Everyone else apart from Aaron nod. Alex, that's, oh dear God. Someone's shaking. Why are you shaking your head? Are you just being difficult? Okay, so this is the destination template. Okay. I was going to give you kind of a quick rundown of the front end features from a user perspective, and we'll look at the back end afterwards. So you have the home page. The home page includes the option to add your own logo. You can edit every piece of text and every image on there to whatever you like. Okay, it supports drop-down menus of any kind that you'd like to do. It includes a full site search function, which we've customized to kind of improve how the results pop out. You may have noticed there's a big slider thing happening. That's completely customized. You can change the image, you can change any of the text on it, you can change where it links to. You can add a video in there if you really want to, which we'll have a look at later on. Moving down the home page, you've got the option to change, as I said, you can change any of the text. We've included kind of an introductory section. Then there's a section to, okay, so this comes back to one of those things about, this is a bit of the thinking behind it. If you said to people, we are Henley and Arden, let's say, or we are Coleshill, for instance, most people may not know what it is that you have to offer. It's not enough to say that. So the idea is that you could pull out some of the bigger things, some of the things that you'd like to showcase to people and say, these are our best bits. So this makes it easy for you to customize these to be able to make quick links to key places in your site. And you can make that to an event, a business listing, a page, a post, anything you want. So it's kind of getting people to do that. The heart of the template is a business directory. Now, what we want to think about with this was ways we can get people into that directory that will be useful for users, given that you may not know a place. So one of the things it generates is it creates a interactive, and this is a Google Map based one. You can turn off the Google Map stuff behind it and just make it a map if you really want to. And each of the elements that are in the directory are searchable from the map. And because it's a Google Map, you can do whatever you like to it. Zoom into it, you can see, for example. So the point is people can physically locate any business they like on the map. Okay. There's also the option to query the database of the businesses to say, I'm looking for X business in whatever category. You can customize those categories quite easily. So you could add services to that. You could add venues to that. You could subdivide food and drink into whatever ones you want. You can also set up locations within it if, for instance, you are covering more than one town, or for instance, you want to set up the high street as one location and, I don't know, Warwick Road as the other one. Sorry, James, I'm using Kenilworth there, but you know what I mean. So you can associate businesses with different parts of your destination just to make it easy for people to find it. There's also a events calendar in it, which we'll look at in a second, and all of this bit at the bottom here is all, if you've used WordPress, you kind of probably guessed this works on things called widgets, and it's all configurable. So out of the box, it's set up to showcase the 5 most imminent upcoming events, to allow you to show a featured event. So for example, if you have a Christmas lights switch on, you've got the town food festival, you've got something you really want people to know about outside of the mainstream events, you have the option to set things as featured and they'll appear there. You can add social media feeds and things like that into it. All of this down the bottom again here is configurable, so it's easy to add in a link to your DMO. It's easy to add in contact details, things like that. There's a second menu down here which allows you to include those things that, while important, you might not want in your main navigation. So things like privacy policy, terms and conditions, the things that you need to be GDPR compliant. And there's also a really clever way of showing the back end of actually linking to your own social media stuff. The whole of the template has smooth scroll added to it, and there's a back to top button at the end of every page. So if I click this, I don't know how smooth that was in the thing, but trust me, when you play with it, you can see things actually move fairly smoothly. Okay. The heart of this is the directory. So inside the directory, we've got, at the moment, it's been set up with categories for accommodation, food and drink, attractions, and shopping. Each of the top level pages allow you to set certain businesses as featured. Say, for example, you want to show off particular ones of those this week or this month, or, you know, it's coming up to Christmas, you want to showcase these ones because they're doing something particularly special. Again, there's multiple ways of getting people to what's in the directory. So you can search it, you can choose to view these as maps or whatever. And every single business listing obviously has its own page, which is generated. There's a Google map showing you where it is. You can add whatever content you like. You can add up to, in fact, you can configure in the back end how many images appear. And if there's more than one, it turns into a little slider. You can add video there and things like that. So whatever way you want to showcase your businesses, you can, basically. There is an events calendar, which works pretty much the same, although it's in a separate section, which I'll show you in a minute. The whole point of that is we didn't want to confuse people with events and business listings. So it's very easy to create certain events that are featured, as we showed you. So that one on the front page will show the most recently one set to featured. This will show up to 3. You've got a fully searchable calendar of events, and I know for a fact I've put all the events into June 2021, which is why there's nothing in there. Or possibly June 2022. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so I put them all in June 2022 just so that they won't expire, but that's not very helpful when you're trying to show people it. I apologise for all the clicking. Every single event again has its own page, which is automatically generated. You've got the Google map. You can put whatever details you want in it. Ultimately, it makes it very easy to add all of these multiple kind of informational types, and all of these things are just ways to get people to those. So, for example, the events, you can search events, or you can look at the calendar and see what's coming up. There is also a contact page, which has got some pre-formatted setups to allow people to easily, you know, say, for example, the idea of this page is if you said, OK, we've got a physical information point we want to make aware to people. We want people to perhaps contact us through this form, or if we've got people who want to amend a listing, we want to send it in a different way. So it's kind of, there's lots of formatting to help people do that. It comes included with a full contact form that works. That is also GDPR compliant, so it doesn't store any of the entries that are onto the server, and it forces people to consent to sending you the information before they send the form. So that's all included. We then also, there's obviously the option you can add as many other pages as you like. So there is kind of free form pages, just an example. And you can add lots of different things to pages. Now it explains in the back end how you can do things like, for example, this is just an idea we have for a travel and parking page. Again, we're just reutilising that interactive Google map for this page because it helps people, you know, it's a Google map. People can use it to find their way to places and things like that, because you can do all of that kind of thing. Some pre-formatted stuff, and there's lots of shortcodes and stuff in the back, which I'll kind of show you a little bit in a minute, but we'll probably talk more about next time. But the idea is it's quite easy to format a page to add anything you like and add as many pages as you want. Very quickly, there's a couple of particularly pre-formatted pages as well. So we created a specific page to enable a destination to be tied into its wider surroundings, ideally to its DMO or to whatever else is happening in the wider Warwickshire thing, because we wanted to make sure each page is very kind of linked into that, because it sort of makes sense. So on this page, you have the option to configure some big things that are kind of in and around you, perhaps things that aren't within your destination or your place itself, but things you might want to be associated with. So if your part of your message is about, for instance, Shakespeare, you perhaps might want to have a link here to Anne Hathaway's cottage or Shakespeare's birthplace or whatever. You know, if you're in Northern Warwickshire, you might do something different. You might want to be linked to, I know Polesworth wants to be linked to Twycross Zoo and Tamworth Castle and Drayton Manor, for instance, because they're big things just outside of their boundaries, but they wanted to make people aware that they were part of that offer. There's also a very easy way to format a really useful link to your local DMO. Rather than, because normally what would happen is people would just have literally a line with one piece of text that'd be underlined that says, and here's where you can find out more information. So we want to make that a little bit more effective. So again, this is easily to customize. You can add information you want, add some images, link directly to include their social media accounts. The point of doing that is it embeds a smaller place, bigger area. Also, because this is a quality link, this is providing some quality information that's probably going to have an SEO benefit to the DMO. It's more likely they might give you a really good link back. So it's about helping places kind of help themselves a little bit. We've also got, all right, so there's a couple of other things. If we set up a specific template to showcase itineraries, we talked about the itineraries tool earlier in the toolkit. This is a specific template to kind of showcase them. So it will automatically decide, you put in the back end the theme that it's for. You can set it to show a web page or download a PDF, whichever way you want to do it, and things like that. So from a front end perspective, there's lots of kind of stuff there. I think, given the time, I'm going to move on from that now, if that's all right. Oh, hello. Didn't mean to do that. That looks more like it. Okay, there's a lot of stuff in it. At the end of the day, it's hopefully you can see it is what it's designed to be. It's designed to kind of, having done some of the thinking and some of the ideas, that a place doesn't necessarily need to reinvent everything from scratch. It helps you direct your efforts into the, you know, the stuff that you actually need to do, which is cataloging your businesses, showcasing your place, and really populating it with effective stuff. Have we got any questions on the template?
James, we had a question from Graham. Graham, are you able to ask your question?
Yeah, I think
Hi, Graham.
Thinking about the amount of work involved, and I mean, your template actually makes the high level of work thinking about it and compiling the content, but then not forgetting the work involved in maintaining it. And my question really is about, is there any way of allowing, you know, businesses who are in the database from, you know, updating their own entries?
Yes, there is.
But you know, sticking to their part of it rather than trampling around.
Yeah, you actually can, and actually it's not that difficult to do. Obviously, it's an extra step you have to take in terms of the planning up front. If you've got other people, I mean, in terms of the kind of the technological bit of the background of setting that up and allowing people to do it, it's not difficult. But you have to be aware of giving power to other people to update things. You're relying on them putting stuff in of adequate quality. So you do run the risk of, you know, they start putting in really low resolution images. You know, they don't put in, you know, the kind of text or the kind of things that you want to be in there as well. So it's not something you can really just take your hands off, but it's definitely possible to do. It's not, and it's certainly not tricky. And this is one of the reasons we're using WordPress, which I'll talk about in a second, but it's because you can quite easily implement stuff like that without too much admin, really.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, we can build a fantastic website, then pop the champagne corks the day it all goes live and it's everything fantastic, and then 6 months later it's all gradually kind of
Yeah. Well, I mean, unfortunately, there's no real way around that. The problem with websites is that they're not, it's not like writing a book. They're never finished. They always require people you to consistently kind of work on it. So it's just finding the easiest ways of doing that.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say about the template is the way that we've put it together is actually, apart from, you'd probably want to add, if you wanted to add particular like articles to it, or updating events, or just ensuring what's in that directory is actually up to date. There's probably very little in terms of actual content maintenance it really needs. I mean, bear in mind, we're not talking about a site here that's trying to, do national marketing campaigns or something. At the end of the day, we're talking about something that works effectively for a place, and providing that's kind of showcasing all the best things a place has, it's doing its job, and I'm freely aware that a lot of these will either be run possibly by volunteers, or possibly some resource from a town council, or possibly by somebody part-time from the Chamber of Commerce who might be doing this, that kind of thing. So it's got to be doable going forward.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi there, Abby. We've got a question from Abby.
Hey, Abby.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you, James. It's all been
No worries.
really useful so far. Just a quick question on images.
Yeah.
I've noticed that they are what I would call stretched or widescreen to fit the size of the website. I'm faced with a barrier at the moment. So I have a website for rugby, the town, and I always struggle uploading good quality images. And I'd like there to be a way that you could just snap something as you're out and about, as opposed to having to book a photographer months in advance. You get a load of good images, before you know it, the seasons have changed, and we all move so quickly. So just any help or advice on that would be great. Okay,
well, look, there's a couple of things to say about that. Number one, you can't really get away from the fact that good images really do make a difference. Taking good imagery is actually one of the big arts of certainly of tourism and certainly of websites. If you can take an image that makes people want to do something, it's worth its weight in gold. So it is worth having good image. Now, there's a lot of stuff in section 3 of the toolkit which actually talks about how you can plan and choose great images. In terms of the technical thing of the template, because out of the box, WordPress automatically resizes images for you to serve on different screen sizes. Hang on, let me just show you. But what we've done with the template is do it sort of dynamically as well. So it's kind of an extra layer on top of that. So let's see if I can make this. I'm going to try, let's emulate. There we go. So we can emulate a phone. So you can kind of see how, I've lost you all there because it's gone baby. So you can kind of see how things expand and collapse based on the size of the screen. So it kind of does all this automatically. So the idea is that you upload the image as large as necessary for, let's say, a full-size desktop thing. The template will do all the hard work to then make that work on no matter what screen size you have. So it's kind of, it can't provide you with top quality images, but what it can do is help you kind of display them no matter what your user's using.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, there's no easy answer to that one. Images are tough, but they're really important. And I would suggest, yes, like I said, section 3 of the toolkit talks a lot more about how to ensure your images are good.
Okay.
And James, we've got one question from Catherine in the chat. So Catherine, would you like to bring it to the forum?
Hi.
Hello.
I think it looks great. My question was, it's been designed for kind of a destination for places. Can it be adapted, do you think, for individual attractions?
Yes, although it does a lot of things that would be sort of superfluous for an individual attraction. I mean, the whole point of this is to kind of sort of showcase a collection of stuff, I suppose. you could use it for that, but frankly, it would be kind of like taking a hammer to crack a walnut, because as an individual attraction, you're going to have particular user needs. They're going to be looking for different things. They don't necessarily need some of the things. So the answer is you could, but I probably wouldn't recommend it.
No, I just wondered, because particularly I manage an attraction amongst other things,
Sure.
and because it's got a George Eliot element, quite a lot of the people who are coming to us also want to see what else they can do with Eliot and other attractions at the same time, and there isn't a really good site for that at the moment. So to a certain extent, we find ourselves having to provide by phone or email or whatever a lot of that additional content. So I was thinking being able to do the attraction and add the itineraries and that kind of thing might work quite well in our particular instance, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're basically being a de facto information centre for a wider area, then totally, that's the point of it. That's what it's there for. And even if all of the things you put in there are all George Eliot related things, that's fine. It's just a way of kind of easily showcasing a load of stuff, I suppose, if I want to boil it down.
Thank you.
James, I was going to say that one of the things that we found when we were looking through the toolkit was how completely relevant it was for anybody doing a website, really. I mean, it's obviously geared very much towards destinations, but I think, Catherine, a lot of the stuff, perhaps for an individual attraction, some of the guidance on content and planning and so on, all of that is completely relevant.
Yes, let me say that. So I was just talking about the template, but frankly, there's probably a lot of stuff in the toolkit that really would be useful. Okay, I think she may have no, she hasn't. No worries. All right, cool. Last question before we move on. I've got somebody. Oh no, there's two people. Okay, Michael or Graham, which one would you like to go first?
We're both from Seldom anyway, but so it's Graham here. I was just going to, the quick point I was going to make, and it may be Michael's thinking the same thing, is that a lot of the places around the country, not just in Warwickshire, are having a lot of new development. So a lot of new people moving in, and the same principle for a destination website kind of applies. It's not really for tourism; it's for people getting to know the place that they've moved to. And I think that's the applicability of that here. We're not expecting, tourists to come flocking in their shorts and sunglasses to Southam necessarily, but
well, you never know. I mean, don't.
There are a lot of people who have moved to estates on the periphery of the town and don't even know whether there's a post office in the centre or not. That's kind of stuff. So it's the same principle to my opinion.
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, I think the point is, I often like to look at tourism as like visitors with a small v. At the end of the day, it's encouraging people to use a place, whether they live there or whether they don't live there. It doesn't matter. The point is, you just have to do a slightly different bit of thinking at the start about who they are and what their motivations are. Is there a reason they're not using the town centre, for instance? Is it because they work somewhere else and they don't see it as viable? And you've got to make certain arguments to them to say, actually, this is worth your time and effort. But otherwise, yes, you're right. Everything else basically applies.
Yeah.
They're just a different user group with different needs. Michael?
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask Graham. Thank you. Here's another one. If we use this template, does this satisfy or help us to satisfy the accessibility requirements for government websites?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a sec. But actually, no, let's talk about it. Yes, it will. Because we coded the site to be sort of fairly bare bones, in terms of the technical stuff, there's actually two little steps you'd need to do to make it completely client to AA standard of WCAG 3. I can't remember what it is now. You know what I mean? It's that one, the accessibility standard. The other one is there's a big chunk of stuff that's in that accessibility standard that's actually beholden on whoever's putting the content in. So that's doing things like making sure there's alt text on images, that using headings semantically, that you're not overusing things like bold text, that if you put videos in, they've got captions included. It's the kind of stuff that you have to do. So technically wise, with a few little steps which we do specify in the manual with it, it will comply with that.
Thank you.
Cool. Michael, still get your hand up. Okay, cool. Shall we move on? Yeah. All right. Okay. So I just want to kind of give you a little kind of a look into the back end of stuff, just to kind of just show you how it works, and more importantly, how easy it is to use, which I think kind of is the point, because it can look nice, but unless it's kind of simple. Now, I would say I'm kind of talking about the WordPress theme here. Now, some of you may have used WordPress, may have heard of WordPress. Some of you may want to run screaming at the notion of WordPress, but it is what we've used for this. Now, there's a couple of good reasons for that, and I think I could probably sort of circumvent that entire slide by actually saying WordPress is about the easiest option there is for non-techie people to manage a website. Okay, there are other options. You can use things like Joomla or Drupal, and if any of you try to use either of those, you'll understand when I say WordPress is much easier. Now, we could have used something proprietary. We could have developed our own system. We could have bought into somebody else's system, but ultimately, all of those would mean that there would have been a cost attached to this to use. Plus, you then also would be holding on to somebody else maintaining the code and making sure it all still works in 6 months' time or 2 years' time, as I think it was Michael pointed out. These things tend to fall over if nobody's looking after it. So the point of using WordPress was that it's got a longevity built into it, because it's freely open source, because there's a massive support community, and because it is what it is. Now, if you haven't used WordPress, it's got a couple of things it really helps you with. Firstly, it gives you what you see is what you get editor, which means that you can edit the content in an environment that looks just like you're editing a Word document or any other word processor. You don't need to know code to do it. Things are genuinely quite well labeled and kind of on a standard format, which I'll show you in a second. There's lots of big buttons and kind of descriptions on boxes, and we've added some extra ones into the stuff that we've customized in the back end to make this all work. WordPress also includes, which most people don't seem to know about, includes a visual customizer, which means it shows you what the front end looks like while you're making changes, so you can preview it before you put it live, which is actually quite a useful tool. It also includes a media library, so you can upload the images to it and use it in multiple places without having to upload them every single time. WordPress also has something built into it called, I'm not going to say what it's called, but anyway, there's an API built into it which basically tracks revisions and does autosave. So even if that, which is always happens, you're in the middle of a post and the internet crashes, WordPress will be saving revisions. In fact, that becomes a problem later on because it will save lots of revisions and you might have to manually sort them out further down the line. But the point is, there's actually a safety net there for whatever you're adding to it. And much like a smartphone, you can extend it to do lots and lots of other things. Now, that can include stuff like including advertising, putting surveys in, social media feeds, you name it, you can do it with it. So it's quite a flexible thing. Now, it's not perfect, it's not bulletproof, but it's probably the best option to enable places to easily get up and be using something without having to buy into something that we can't guarantee the longevity of, I suppose. So we're kind of looking at it as that the easiest option to get there, with giving you the most control over stuff and without needing to get a web designer necessarily on the case to do stuff for you. Okay. So that's WordPress. So the template itself, all right, I'm going to apologize because I'm going to get slightly techie for a minute, but just to explain what the template is. Bear with me, it's not going to get that techie. All right, so generally in the bad old days, websites were static. You basically had a series of files. You had HTML, which structures the page, tells you where everything should appear. You had CSS, which tells you what everything looks like, and JavaScript, which makes cool things and like the slider we saw and stuff like that happen. If you want to change anything on a site, you'd have to go in and manually change lines of code in those files. Okay. The wonder of WordPress when you fire it up is that WordPress uses something called PHP, which I'm not going to explain what it is right now, but it gives you a database, which means that you can write certain values to a database. And much like that spreadsheet, you can then go back to it and you can store the text of a page in a database. So when it opens a page, it goes and looks in the database and see what was saved there and then puts it into the page, which means that you can update the stuff on the back end without having to change any code. Out of the box, WordPress is boring. That's basically what it looks like. It's really dull. So what WordPress then allows you to do is to add what it calls themes, which provide the layout, the look and feel, the functionality of stuff, and add extra plugins to kind of add extra sort of functions to it. What it also does is it generates a back-end website. So there's kind of two websites happening. There's the front one that the users see and the back-end admin interface that you see. So when you change something here, it automatically sends it to there. And what that means is that people only really have to worry about adding their own text, their own images, and and tweaking the settings. Okay. It's quite clever and it lets us do some cool things. So the template itself is a custom theme. We've bundled a few plugins with it and also made some that are recommended to use with it. And we've customized some of those, not in any way that they can still be updated, they can still be originally, but we've just changed the way they appear and some of the functions that they put out into the site. We've included demo content, which includes all the settings and the images, the text and everything. So when you start it up, you can literally populate the site and have it all set up there with all the categories, all the pages, everything all kind of ready to go. So all you have to do at that point is literally take almost the site that I showed you earlier and just populate it with your own stuff, with your own text, tweak the settings as you like, and mess around with the pictures. And as you want, you can create the website. So it's more than just a theme. There's lots of other stuff going on inside it as well. Everything you need to know to get it set up is held within these two documents. So the manual, which includes full instructions on setting it up, how to configure it, how to install the demo content, as well as how to edit and change every single piece of content within the template, how to change every bit of every page, how you can do all that yourself. The toolkit is really powerful when used alongside it because the toolkit, as we saw earlier, helps you develop the content that's going to go into it. Okay, so between those two, they kind of tell you everything you need to know. Right, I'm just going to show you the back end of it very quickly. If anyone's seen WordPress before, this will not be a surprise to you, but hopefully stick with me. It's fun. It'll be all right, honestly. It won't be that scary. The first bit I'm going to show you is on the PowerPoint rather than live because it includes my login. I'm not letting you have my login. So you can log in. If you haven't used WordPress before, you can log into WordPress in any web browser because technically the admin is held on the same place as your website. All you need is your username and password. Okay. Once you get in there, hang on. Ta-da! You get hit with the WordPress interface. You get given a dashboard, which is possibly the most useless thing in the world. There is no point looking at this screen. It does nothing of any relevance whatsoever. What is important is this menu down the left-hand side. Okay, so this is where you can control all of the stuff that's in the site. Now, let me just flip back in here. It looks perhaps a little bit complicated, but it isn't. It's got two distinct areas. The top half, anything in the white area, controls all the content you add to the site. Everything in the pink half at the bottom is settings and back-end tasks and things like that. So therefore, in order of importance, pages is where you add and edit website pages. Media is where you upload images. Classifiers and directories where you add or edit the listings for all of the business directory. Events holds your events, funnily enough. Itineraries is where your itineraries are held. And you notice we've kept those separate just to make it easy for people to manage that on the back end. So you're not having to put, for example, everything into the post section, which you do see on some sites, and then things with different categories. What we've done is separated these out. So you know that all of your itineraries are in one place, all your events are in another place, all of your listings are in another place. So it's kind of easy to manage. All of the editing for changing the sliders on the home page and all your forms. There's the appearance table. We'll look at that in a second, a bit more detail. You can add or remove or manage plugins there, add, remove or manage users, which is actually where you could bring in people to manage their own stuff with a little bit of extra tweaking. And then there's some stuff at the bottom, tools and settings, which you generally don't need to muck about with too much. WordPress kind of takes care of these things for you. Okay. There's not that many things in there and it's kind of an easy interface. And therefore, once you get to know that and know where everything is, it's just a case of physically doing it. So, let me just go back to the live site. So let me just show you a couple of things on the live site, just in the back end. So for example, if you come into any of the top level things, this is basically the same no matter what you go into. WordPress will show you all of the pages that you have the ability, or all of the options within this area that you can edit. So for example, if we go into, let's edit the, what am I looking for? Travel and parking page. Let's edit the travel and parking page. And then you come into what is the editing screen in WordPress. Now, some of you have probably seen something that looks like this before. Now, it might look horrible the first time if you ever see it, but actually once you get used to this, every single thing that you edit uses the same format. So it's only a case of learning the rules once, if you like, to make it easy. So hang on, let me go on to let's have the equivalent page up. Okay, so this is the travel and parking page on the front end, yeah? So in the back end, whatever I change this to here, this title here will change the title that appears there. Whatever I change in this box here that says page description will change the white text that appears underneath the title, and so forth. So you can kind of see that different boxes change different things. To change the header image, it's as simple as just clicking on it, choosing another image, clicking the blue button to change the image, for instance. You also have the main editing pane. So in this, you'll see things like how you can change the font sizes, paragraph, you can bold text, italicize text, do various lists, you can link things, that kind of stuff. Hopefully all of that doesn't look, those kind of controls don't look too complicated. And whatever you put in here will basically output in this section of the page. Okay, now I did mention shortcodes earlier, and we'll talk more about shortcodes next time, but shortcodes make exciting things happen without you having to do code, for instance. So for example, here I've got, there's a shortcode there in square brackets that makes that bus icon appear without you having to do anything clever in the back end. So there's lots of kind of shortcuts to help you do some of the more advanced things without having to know too much. All of that is detailed in the manual. When you change anything on a page in WordPress, you just have to make sure you hit the blue update button afterwards. That's basically how you edit a page. Now, what's really interesting is if we go into another section, let's say this is how we influence the sliders on the home page, it looks horribly familiar because, again, like I said, it uses the same rules to change things. So if I want to change, and again, you may have noticed the interface again looks horribly familiar. It's because, like I said, you learn one set of rules, you only learn it once. So for example, in here, if I want to change the image on the main slider, I'll click in there, we'll change it to, let's change it to that one of Polesworth Gatehouse. Actually, no, that'll look horrible because it's really low res. That one, that'll do. Change that. If I hit update now, it will change the slider on the home page. I can change what appears in it. If I wish to, I can make the slide into a video. The only thing to say is that you have to host the video locally because the YouTube and Vimeo APIs make things a little bit more tricky to pull video in from there. So you'd have to put the video on your own site, but it is certainly possible to do. And again, you just hit the blue update button when you're ready to post things. Now, if I want to add a post or a directory item or an itinerary, it works exactly the same way. Okay, it's pretty much identical. Now, there's a couple of other things I just want to show you. So over here, we have the appearance one. Now, within this, we have the visual customizer, which always takes a little while to load. Okay, so what this is showing you is this is showing you a preview of the front end while you're making changes to it. Now, there's two big reasons you come in here. Firstly, because you can customize the site somewhat. So for instance, if you want to change the fonts on the site, if you add an extra plugin, which we talk about in the manual, which is the Google Fonts plugin, you can quite easily pop in here and change the font. So if let's change the heading font to Century Gothic. Yeah, and as you can see, that's quite quickly amended the font face there. You could change the to let's go to Times New Roman for the body font. So you can see this has now changed to Times New Roman. So it's quite easy to customize your fonts, for instance, which could let you have your own way of developing the site. If I hit the blue publish button, that will send that live, but I'm not going to because that looks frankly nasty. So let's not do that. We also built in some easy ways where you could customize the color scheme of the site. So yes, the site is white and red. The idea of it being white was to kind of show off any images that you put into it without overshadowing them. But if you don't like the red, you can change the red. So in here we have theme colors. Now there's individual color controls, which will change every instance of the red, or you can add a stroke, change the whole thing just to see how things look. So if you don't like the red, you can come in here and use this color picker. Let's go for blue. As you can see, everything that was red is now blue. It's not great. The idea of that is this tool is to kind of just show you and let you try things out, and you could equally make it. Oh, no, that's nasty. Let's not do that. But anyway, so the point being is you can try out different color combinations. And if you mess it up, there's a default button which will send it back to red again if you get it wrong. Now, you obviously can style these with CSS, but this is a user interface way of being able to quickly tweak things. So if you go into the individual ones, you can change lots of the different elements of it. You can change the background colors as well. There's also in here is where a lot of the settings for the home page are. So if we come down here to the home page one, this is where you can change the text that appears here on the welcome bit. It's where you can configure these links. So you can choose the image that appears there. Let's add that one. Because that image wasn't the right shape, it's telling you it wants to crop this instance of it. So it fits nicely into that box, as you can see. And then you can change the text, change where it's going to, change where it links to on the site. It's a very easy way of doing that. This is also where all the settings for that further afield page are. So again, if we come into the customizer, so this is where you can configure where these links go on the further afield page and where you configure your big link to the DMO. So you can change the suggestion ones, which are those ones there. You can change the DMO's details, for example, and you can quite easily put in the social media ones. Now, the interesting thing about this is that if you put a link into the relevant one, it'll automatically post the correct logo down there so people know what they're looking at. So there's some kind of clever stuff on the back end. I'm not going to save any of that. Hello. Yeah, I don't want to save it. It's okay, it's fine. So the last thing I just want to show you is, actually I'm not going to show you on here because that's got people's passwords in it. Let me just come back to this. So when you come into the users section, which is that one there, you can set anyone and give them particular rights to look at whichever bit of the site you want. So you can allow people to have access to the admin interface. You can just allow people to be editor level and things like that. You can also force people to have strong passwords or change their passwords and that kind of stuff. So you have a lot of control kind of out of the box. And there's other things you can add to it that would quite easily allow you to allow people to have access to only a specific part of the site or a specific page, for instance. Cool. Very quickly, I'm just going to show you Polesworth's one, just because then you can kind of see it live. So this is Polesworth's site. If you want to look at it yourself, it's visitpolesworth.co.uk. They wanted to use the template out of the box. I offered to customize it for them. They said, no, we like red and white. We particularly like it the way it is. But as you can see, they filled it with their own imagery. Incidentally, these were all taken by a volunteer locally who did all of these. So most places do have, great talent within them to allow this to happen. They've populated the directory. There's something like 70 odd businesses in there. You can see as you come down, they've got things from attractions all the way to food and drink, shopping, everything. It's not perfect. It's a locally run site by a group of volunteers. But the point is, this is showcasing Polesworth in a way that wouldn't exist if they hadn't done this. And the site's allowed them to kind of start it off really. And they've used the built-in kind of blog articles section of WordPress to actually showcase the history of Polesworth. So they had a local history society. They broke down the history of Polesworth into manageable bite-sized pieces, and I'm going to post them a couple of months or once every few months to kind of just help people get a handle on the history without it being an overwhelming amount all in one go. All right. I think at that point, have we got any questions finally about the back end of the site? Because otherwise I think I'm pretty much done in anything I can kind of show you. Or any further questions about anything? I don't really mind.
James Kennedy.
Yeah, thanks. It's for using WordPress. Do you have to buy it as a program?
Nope, it's free.
All right.
It's free. It's open source. It's used by about 1/3 of the websites on Earth. Quite a lot of things you wouldn't expect are being powered by it.
All right.
And they run it for the good of humanity. Like I said, it's not perfect. You know, a lot of people say things about WordPress like, you know, it can be a bit slow. It's not 100% secure and things like that. But a lot of that comes down to how people use it. If you have strong passwords, if you're kind of vigilant about what you're doing and things like that, it's as secure as anything else that you might have. You can optimize it to make sure, if you use it badly, it can be very slow, but you can easily optimize it to make it very, very quick. You know, in a lot of cases, WordPress is what you make it at the end of the day.
Michael, would you like to come in?
Yeah, sure. I may have missed it. You may have mentioned this. I may have missed it. System requirements for editors and administrators.
Mm-hmm.
Is it tolerant to Windows, iOS-based systems, or a particular type? Or
no, what it is, it's actually an inbuilt thing into WordPress. So you can, when somebody signs up, you can nominate a role for them. Now, there's some inbuilt roles which are administrator, which means you can do everything. And that goes down to there's things like, I think there's contributor, where somebody could write a page, but an administrator would have to moderate it and approve it before it can go live and things like that. So you could have your businesses, for instance, updating their own content at that level, and somebody would just have to review it and set it live. And it just means that they don't have access to doing things like adding new plugins or deleting other people's pages or things like that. But there's lots of ways you can extend that to provide more sort of fine-grained control of things. So you can allow people to only work on specific pages or things. You know, it's quite flexible, I suppose. It's kind of working out what you want to achieve in the first place.
Yeah, that's not quite answered the question I posed.
Okay, sorry.
Right, I've got a Mac. Graham's got a Windows-based system. Somebody else might have Linux or whatever. Can we all edit the same web page?
Yeah,
if we've got the access rights.
Because it lives on a web browser. So providing you can access the internet, and you log in through a web page, it doesn't matter what you're doing it on. You can do it on your TV, you could do it on your phone, you can do it on whatever you like.
Perfect, thank you.
Aaron?
I'm on mute, sorry. Abby, if you'd like to come in, I'm conscious of time as well.
Sorry.
Hi. My question's about stats. So is there a way to monitor how many clicks you've got or visits to the site, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, basically the best way of doing that is honestly to install Google Analytics. There are other stats packages available, but it's a bit like suggesting another search engine. I don't really know why people would use anything else. Google Analytics is free, and all you've got to do is put a small piece of code into the header of every page. You can do that manually, or you can get a plugin for WordPress that does all the hard work for you. So then you get all the stats. And I can't tell you how much information you'll get from Google Analytics. So Google Analytics not only tells you how many people visit your site, it tells you what they're doing on it, what pages they're visiting, what pages they got bored and left on, what pages they visited after looking at other pages. It's a really powerful tool that can tell you a lot of really interesting stuff and help you get people to, you know, understand why people aren't clicking to look at that particular listing, or why people aren't clicking to join your event, or why people aren't, you know, doing X, Y, or Z. So yes, you can. We do cover that a little bit in the manual, but it's not difficult to do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay. No, it's just me. Sorry, I'm cutting in, James. I'm just conscious of the time because we've just come to the magical hour of 3:30.
Okay.
Are there any other burning questions? Otherwise, I think it's probably time for us to wind it up. If that's okay, nobody's showing their hands. So, yeah, can I just say thanks a million from all of us, James? A really clear presentation. A number of people have said that in the course of your presentation, so thank you. I just want to end with a plug for the second of your sessions, which
can I do that first? Is that all right?
Yeah, you go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, just a couple of final thoughts before Alex. I just want to steal Alex's thunder because it's funny. Right, a couple of final thoughts just to say, if you want to try it out, and I really would suggest you, one thing you can do, go and familiarise yourself and use the template as an end user. If you go to wp.destinationtemplate.co.uk, you can play with the live front end. Okay. If you want to use the back end, you'll have to ask Alex nicely to provide you a login, or perhaps he'll demonstrate it for you over a live Teams meeting with you or whatever. But he'll show you how the back end works and things like that. Please do go and look at Polesworth's site, because you can kind of see what an actual physical group of people, and I admit there was 4 of them, put together to do it. So you can kind of see how it actually could work in practice. Don't forget the toolkit. Toolkit is a really important part of this. You can get that at destination. In fact, you can get to anything through destinationtemplate.co.uk, but I've given you the direct link to look at the test site. If you have any other questions, you can contact the team at Warwickshire County Council. You probably know who they are. Alex is already here. Rachel was lurking in the background somewhere. She's probably disappeared somewhere by now. Maybe. No, she's probably still there. Yeah, no, she's still there. She's put her hand up. I just want to say next time, right, we're going to be here on the 3rd of November. So this time we've been looking at what it is. Next time I'm going to talk you through how you set it up, show you how easy it is. We're going to go through step by step what you actually need to do to populate it, which isn't as difficult as you think, and that's actually a lot easier than you think. And just cover some of the things about launching and managing it. And if we have time, we'll look at some more techie ways of customizing it to make it look relevant for your place. And I'll give you some more free links and resources, some great stuff you can get hold of, just as a kind of a sweetener to entice you all back. But until then, I'm pretty much done. Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you, James. And thanks to everybody for coming today. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Aaron, do I need to do anything particular on the recording, or will you do that?
I'll do all of that. Don't worry.
Okay. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.